learn. But for people who just spend their time learning and never applying it, no amount of learning will be worthwhile unless you apply it. But you can take a mop and learn something from it, right? So that the reason why I was able to kind of get a job and rise quickly, and you know, I didn't go through much of a story, but I was essentially a graduate in a company doing $7 or $8 billion, and within about 2 years I ended up moving, kind of like under 2 years, it was like a year and 9 months. So I was pretty much still regarded as a graduate, right, with about like a year's experience. I moved to a different part of the company, which is about $3.2 billion, a big portfolio, hundreds and hundreds of branches, businesses internationally and all that. And I was the lowest level person in the company, but within 2 years, I became the second in charge. So it was the boss and then me and then everyone else. Like we had the CFO and all those guys. And when you do that, people hate you, right? It wasn't because I was any smarter than them. It wasn't because I was more technical than them. It was because I used my skills in mopping and waitering and all that kind of stuff to relate to people, to communicate with people, and to use the life skills that I have learned in my job that made the job make sense. Because sometimes technical people go, this is the technical way, but that's not how it works in real life. And if you're in management and management consulting, I've worked with the guys from McKinsey's, from IBM, from Accenture, you know, from all the top firms. I've worked with them, with the partners, with the CEOs of those firms. And I've worked with Harvard guys, Harvard executives, Stanford, Oxford, rocket scientists who thought rocket science was too easy, they'd go into business, neurosurgeons who have gone into business from those Ivy League schools. The problem they had was everything they knew came from theory and they couldn't apply it. Whereas I was the guy mopping the floor. I knew when a customer had a problem, someone had to help them. And I would offer my hand to them. Whereas they didn't connect those things. They would just go, but the Keynesian model of da-da-da-da, she'd be like, well, that's not how it works. And when it came down push to shove, then they couldn't influence the organization the way that I could, because they just lacked those connections. Like, for example, they had a cost-saving initiative across the company where they would take out part of employees across the country and consolidate full-time equivalents and part-time equivalents into a central processing center. And I said, that's not going to work. And they came through and did all their analysis and all that stuff. And now it's like, I said, that's not going to work. And they're like, but why all the things, like, you know, these guys were from Harvard and they're saying, this is going to make this much savings and, you know, this much more profit. And it's like, it's not going to work because there's two people in that town, right? One of the guys in sales is going to be out of the store. The other half, that person needs to open the door to let people in, the customers in, and take their money and serve them. If you take that half a person out, there's going to be no one to open the store. You might as well close the store. And they're going, oh, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah, all right. Well, chuck the 3 million we spent on them out the door, right? So using that experience and being basic, sometimes for me, is what will actually help me. So that's why I'm saying I would have thrown all that study out the door, but, you know, because in my experience, I didn't use that. I used my other learnings to actually, you know, do what I do now. And it applies still. I still use those learnings from back then to advise our clients, whether they're a startup or whether they have, you know, $20 20, 30 staff, whether they have 100 staff. We've got clients with 6,500 staff who we deal with, like the owner. And we've got Twiggy Forest, that's one of our biggest clients, who owns Fortescue Metals. And our strategy still works because it's grounded in reality. And the problem that university students have, that you will be competing with, hopefully you can take this message and use it, is that they're competing on theory. You need to compete on practice.
Yeah.
Take your life experience.
Yeah.
If I look at 400, like we've had up to 2,000 applications for jobs in our company, right? 2,000 applicants. How do we pick between the candidates? They've all gone to uni, they've all done masters, they've all done MBAs. How do we pick them? It's not on theory. We look at basic things. Did the person show up? Yeah. Did they turn up for the interview? Did they dress appropriately? You know, did they communicate well? Did they answer the question, or did they try and skirt around it and talk about other things? Did they interpret our question correctly and give us a logical, sensible answer? You know, just basic things like that. And then, you know, seeing who's more personable, seeing who's going to relate to our team better, seeing who's going to work with people better rather than try to be the smartest person, right? So, you know, those are things that will help you compete with every other grad out there who's finishing, looking for a job.
I think that even answers my next question, which I was going to ask you about. What skills do you think are really important? But like you said, teamwork and coming up on time. So, and you know, along with that, good decision making and analytical skills. So if you were to suggest some more skills which you think are very important for a job seeker, which ones would you first look at if you get a resume?
Learn how to sell yourself. Learn sales.
Yeah.
Everything is about selling and influencing. You want to tell your boyfriend you want a certain type of food that night, you have to convince him, right? Right?
Yeah.
You want your parents to do something, you have to sell to them. You want your customer to buy something, you have to sell to them. You want your business partner to do something for you, you have to sell to them. You want your child to go to bed, you have to sell to them. So learn sales. Yeah. A lot of people go, oh, here's my degree and what I've done, but they're not selling themselves, right? Selling requires certain skills. You have to be able to make the other person want what you have. and no one wants that stuff on paper, right?
Yeah.
They want to buy, they're going to buy you, not your degree. No one's going to buy your degree. They're going to buy who you are. So you got to learn how to sell yourself, learn selling skills.
I think that's a very great answer. And the emphasis on personal branding has actually been under the water when it comes to, like you said, you know, when people come in and showing you just the degree, what they are below the degree matters a lot. So yeah, I think that's a great advice.
Thank you. Any other questions?